All right, what's up, YouTube? This one's kind of gonna be a little bit of a longer video. So, I know this has been circulating around for a bit, but I wanted to kind of go over it myself. So this is a Patreon page for Patrick Miller, also known as PatTheFlip. He was on the 2XKO dev team. Uh, I believe he was the one who got laid off during the initial layoffs, but he was on the original 2XKO team. So based off of what I heard from the post, I haven't read it fully myself. Um, he basically was saying like he didn't care whether the game failed or not. He just wanted to make a really cool fighting game. So a lot of people are kind of like what the hell. So anyways, let's go over it. Let's see what we can gather from it, and yeah, I'll give you my thoughts based off of it, and let's see where Pat's coming from. Former dev of the game. All right, please support my work by signing Patreon. Blah 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 blah. Cat video. Blah. Okay. Excuse me. All right, now it's time to write about 2XKO since it's cessation of active or cessation of active development as announced yesterday. So it was announced I see a while ago. I'm reading this a few days later. Details are in the post. This link takes you to the Twitter post by the 2XKO and the Riot Games Twitters. All right, in case you missed it, they're still going to release the two upcoming champs, Lux and Samira. Lux is going to be like a Shoto type character. Samira's coming out in October. We don't know much about her yet, other than that she's Samira. The servers will remain active, but the team itself will dissolve in December 2026. The game hasn't been doing great. It's probably not a surprise to anyone paying attention, but to announce a shutdown less than a year after the game's official release is tough. For anyone who was in the layoffs, though, this is expected. Contrary to some of the speculation I've been seeing out there, laying off half the dev team shortly after release is not typically a thing you plan to do for a live service game. Yeah, this is kind of concerning. I don't know why people thought laying off. I don't know who thought laying off half of the dev team was normal. You only do layoffs when something's not doing well, you're not making money. That's like basic business 101. You don't do layoffs if you're doing well, because layoffs are meant to save money. But yes, typically not something you plan to do for a live service game because you want the dev team to keep making the game so people stick around to play it. Yes. If you are going to lay off half the team, you probably don't lay off parts of the team, specifically focus on nurturing the game as a live service, like the former live balance producer currently writing this, unless things are dying. Okay, so he was the live balance producer. So he was I guess yeah, he was in charge of like balance, like game balance, making sure nothing was too broken. So Yohozi took his job then. Got it. Um Laying them off is only something you do because you already know the game isn't going to cover its operating expenses. I do appreciate the folks decrying to KO's abrupt end, but turnarounds for game health and performance are so rare that you've probably heard of most of the games that manage to do it. Here's some quick napkin math to explain the situation. If a game charges $60 base price, then its average revenue per player is at least $60. Thus, whatever accelerate the amount is for season passes and whatnot. If a game is free to play, then the average revenue per user is much lower. Actual numbers depend on the game's monetization strategy and retention rates, but it's pretty common to see something like 80% of the players paying nothing, 10% of the players making a single small transaction, and the remaining 10% of the players spending enough money to sustain operations and make a profit. Yeah. So this is typical for live service games. Um, most commonly and recently popular as of like 2020 are gacha games. So you have like the large free to play audience, the casuals and all that, the guys who never spend any money, they just play the game. Then you'll have like the light spenders who will do like one, two purchases. Maybe every now and then they'll throw some money at it, but it's never really anything large. For a lot of games, I'm in that category. Um, You'll have the Dolphin players, which they'll spend a decent amount of money on occasion, and I am like that for games that I really support. Um, so if you get money out of me, then that means your game is good. Wuthering Waves, NTE. Yeah, so yeah, those are types of players. Like they're pretty good. But the whales are where the profit comes in. These are the guys who, in like a gotcha terms, they're making sure they get every single character, maxing out every single dupe, maxing out the weapons and all that. Spending money to continue playing the game because there's stamina systems in gotcha games. In a fighting game live service, it'd be the guys who spend money on all of the cosmetics, no matter how expensive they are, um, and buy whatever else stuff the game offers. Um, I've already talked about this, but for me, the monetization was the biggest L that the company took. Not because of the prices. The prices were definitely really, really high, but Riot's kind of already established that that's the type of price range they're going to keep. What I think was really bad with the monetization, and I've talked about this in the video I made on that day where the game's announced its end of development. But the bundle locking thing where you would just have things that you could not get without getting the entire bundle, like that's just not right. I think everything should have been purchasable individually, and then you could just get like the bundle as a whole for cheaper than if you were to buy every single item individually. Valorant does this, and I think it's a good system, even if the prices are really, really high, and I don't like the high prices. I think the system itself fundamentally is good. Even like the gotcha companies, they're super predatory and disgusting, but like they separate their spending so that people who want to spend money have something affordable that they can do so they can pick the option that they want. And then they also offer like other things that are not nearly as good but still functionable to kind of like help players along, but that's another thing entirely. But my point, the monetization was really, really bad. And they made a game that was dependent on like the gotcha style income stream of like whales, dolphins, low spenders, and free to plays, but they didn't do everything in their power to accommodate that type of spending need. They primarily focused on whale, 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 whale. And as I said in the video before, you want to accommodate the big spenders and the little spenders the same amount because the little spenders are just as important as the big spenders. So that's just something that's really, really messed up with their monetization method, and it's a huge part as to why they didn't make as much money as they could have. Because like imagine, like I said, like one person buying $100 packet, cool, you made $100. But 100 people buying the $5 packet, that's $500 right there. That's much more money, and you accommodated the small spender rather than just the big spender. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked again. Sorry, but yeah, this is gonna be more like a ramble video. Um, yeah, okay. The average revenue per user is usually closer to cents or single-digit dollars for every single user who bought a skin or a battle pass 8 or 9. Others didn't, or 8 or 9 others didn't. Oh, okay. So for every single person that did 8 or 9 didn't. Okay, got it. In order for a free-to-play game to make an equivalent amount of money to a paid game, then it needs to have somewhere around 10 times as many players at least. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that all sounds right. I'll let you connect the dots yourself on whether those numbers sound like reasonable sound math for business viability. Personally, I mercifully insulated from any of those conventions and got focused on making the game I believed in. Yeah, okay, so again, like a big thing that happened was fighting games are very niche, it's a much smaller audience. So it was kind of ridiculous to expect like the big numbers of like a MOBA or a FPS game to be the type of fan base. Fighting games are a very niche type of game genre, so Like having this type of expectation was pretty crazy, but like it's understandably so depending on like the development costs and server costs. Yeah. So free to play does have the potential to do those numbers and was believed to have a lot more potential to do so in 2016. Yeah, back in 2016 they probably could have because like, you know, if they didn't take as long to develop the game and it came out closer to like this time, then they most certainly could have brought in more players. A lot of like the hype died because the game took so long to come out and because like they didn't market it well. But yeah, okay. So while I understand that people will look at stuff like Evo registration numbers and think, oh, it seems they're doing fine, that's fine relative to $60 pay games, which is not fine for a free to play game of comparable development expenses. If you felt things are fine, it was mostly because the dev team did a very good job keeping appearances while knowing exactly where things were headed. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of fell into this trap. Like I understood like they laid off half the dev team, and I know that was bad, but at the same time, like 160 people on a dev team was kind of a lot, so I thought it would be okay. And that's on me. Alright. Despite my bitterness about the layoffs, I think the fact that 2SKO got to finish out the year with half the team is reasonably generous, all things considered. I say this as someone who had no incentive to say anything nice about Riot. I don't think anyone else would have bet on fighting games like this. I don't know if anyone else will ever bet on fighting games like this, and despite the long and varied list of criticisms I have about the company in general, the willingness to make that bet was what kept me on 2XKO for all that time. Cool. If you asked me to bet my own money on a free-to-play tag fighter and do to do the 10 time to do 10 times the numbers I was paid competitors, I would say no thank you. But if you asked me if I wanted to work on a free-to-play fighting game funded by someone else making that bet, hell yeah, brother, sign me up. If you're asking me how the hell someone came up with that bet at all I can tell you is that betting wasn't my job, and what I know of the story behind it isn't particularly interesting anyway. It's just people doing the best they can, making decisions in the moment based on information they have. No one can predict the future, and no one's blessed with Apollo's gift of prophecy. Oh, and the ones blessed with Apollo's gift of prophecy are just guessing. So, if you're looking for a spicy tell-all something, it won't come from me. Gotta drink my water. Yeah. I do have a longer write-up I'll post sometime next week, specifically about the stuff I worked on. But today's post is mostly about how I feel about the game now and that I've had little distance from it. Yeah. Before I go any further, I want to clarify for the people who read this and don't know who I am. I worked on 2XKO Project L for 10 years as a designer and producer on several different parts of the game, including core gameplay, metagame systems team, and would eventually become the lobbies and finally producer on the gameplay analysis and live balance team. I probably had a hand in many of the things you love or hate about the game, and you can blame or praise me for whatever you like, but I assure you that the process by which 2XKO became what it did is not singularly attributed to any kind of human on the team, not even the executive producer or game director. And so whatever narrative you have in your mind while reading this is probably wrong. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fair. Like, it's true. Like, there are things I don't like about the game, but at the end of the day, it's a team that balances it, and then one person kind of passes the check to see whether it's like okay or not. So at the end of the day, it like if you're the head of balance, it is kind of your fault because you passed it as a check, but it's also not 100% your fault because you have to follow like the vision of like the lead directors and what they want for the game. So it's like a 50-50 split of whose fault it is, in my opinion. Yep. After seeing someone on 2XKO subreddit deliberately misread a short story of mine that had literally nothing to do with 2XKO, I figured I'd make this as clear as possible. As a fighting game expert and member of the dev team from day -180, I was frequently consulted for my thoughts and opinions, but I am not any of the leadership roles ultimately accountable for the decisions you love or hate. Just someone that decision makers talk to often while trying to figure out the best route forward. Okay, so never mind. I still stand by like it's 50-50 felt, but yeah. This is not a postmortem about how 2XKO became what it did and why it didn't work financially. This is about how I felt about my time in the game while working on it and how I feel about it now. Okay, fan art, cool. I've had a little over 6 months to emotionally prepare for this since the layoffs. In those 6 months, I've gotten to reflect on a lot, I've gotten to reflect a lot on how things played out and whether I would have done anything differently had I known the outcome. There isn't much that I regret, and certainly nothing that would have changed the course of the game. Anyone who worked with me during that time probably remember a meeting or conversation where I said one of three things. My job is to figure out how I can make an awesome fighting game, making it profitable is someone else's job. Yeah, okay. I'd rather make an interesting failure than a boring success. Why not? The worst thing that happens is that we all get fired. Okay, so this is probably where like the whole thing stemmed from, of like what he's saying. And yeah. It's kind of true. So this one up here, I can kind of agree with his point. If he's on the dev team, his job is just to make the game. That's 100% true. Making it profitable is entirely up to the marketing team, and that's where they failed. He did not fail in this part where he tried to make the game awesome. For a lot of people, myself included, 2XKO is a very fun and awesome game. Yes, we have gripes with it, and nobody likes every single thing about the game, but overall, a lot of us think the game is cool. So this one is 100% true. His job is to just figure out how to make a cool fighting game. And profitability comes down to the marketing team. How they market the game, get the word out, get people to play the game. And they failed that super hard. A lot of people didn't even know the game was out when it had already been out for several months. And then, of course, there's the name of the game, right? So if you didn't already know, and I just said, yo, you should come play 2XKO, what inclination does that tell you that is a Riot fighting game with the League of Legends IP? Where would you have gotten that from the name 2XKO? You wouldn't, right? Like if I said, oh, my game's name is called Floobily Doobily. You have no idea what my game is. And my game could be like my dream fighting game of like an actual Final Fantasy fighting game, but it's called Floobily Doobily. You'd never know unless I marketed it out there. And it all comes down to like the name. And that was a big part of, that was another big part of it. Like there's no one reason as to why this game failed, but it's certainly, those are some contributing factors. But here, I'd rather make an interesting failure than a boring success, and why not? The worst that happens, we all get fired. These two, I can kind of he very much didn't care whether the game failed. He just wanted to make a cool fighting game. He wanted to do what he wanted. He didn't care about whether it was right for profitability. This is 100% all him, and this is bad. Because if this was what he focused on, then he didn't focus on like the casual side. And anyone in the gaming industry knows that yes, the competitive side is very cool, very fun, and we all love it. But the casual side is where you get the retention, the audience, how you keep them. This is literally the wrong mindset to have when working on a game. You definitely want to have the mindset of make an awesome fighting game, but you don't want the mindset of whatever, worst happens, we get fired, and who cares if it's a failure. This is definitely not the type of mindset you want. So I can see where people were coming from when they were saying this. This is 100% not it. All right. The job in front of us was not to play it safe, and given this, none of the outcomes here are particularly surprising. There are a lot of parts to 2XKO that are riskier bets than other fighting games. free-to-play, active tag, high-powered characters with simple inputs, high rewards for difficult execution. This is normal high reward for difficult execution. A lot of games have that. The list goes on. Each of those decisions was made in service of delivering the best game we could make. A game that provides the kind of experience that brought us into the fighting games and kept us here for the rest of our lives. A game worthy of the opportunity we had been given. There's no doubt in my mind that we could have been sustainable business out of a less ambitious project. But to me, making a boring fighting game success would have been far more disappointing than making a failure that we were proud of. Okay, so he's kind of just doubling down on this, which, I get it. You want to be proud of the work that you do, but at the same time, you still need to have that mindset of success. You need to not always listen to players, but listening to players is kind of important because they tell you what they want. And if a lot of players want something and it's reasonable to do, then it's probably something you should do. Like, the biggest complaints are not enough champions and not enough casual game modes. Casual game modes bring in the casual audience. Champions are how you get people to notice your game. There are lots and lots of League of Legends champions, and they barely put any of them in this game. If you wanted to attract the League of Legends community to your game because that was the best bet for making this game successful, you would have made the effort to put more champs in. Champions are how the people get interested. Like, a lot of the Arcane fans tried this game out because of the Arcane characters. Jinx, Vi, Echo, Caitlyn, Warwick. Those are all, the popular characters from Arcane, and the people love those characters and wanted to play 2XKO and possibly League of Legends because of it. Like, I have friends who didn't play this game specifically because they didn't have a champion they wanted to play, like Master Yi, Set, Aurelia, and lots of others. Like, there was the Poppy guy. Everyone knows the Poppy guy. Poppy for 2XKO. Like, you have so many characters you could have pulled from, and you chose to only include a little bit. And it's not like you're establishing an IP and a fan base from scratch. Riot Games did this for you. League of Legends is hugely popular, but they didn't put the effort to make the game profitable. They only cared about making the game cool. Like, as Pat says right here, right? So, there's an alternative future where the game is financially stable and utterly devoid of sauce. A future I imagined countless times while we iterated and tested every single character and system in there, and the outcome is far more depressing to me than this one. I probably would have just quit after launch anyway. As a game developer, I think the power of the video game is that they can make us better, and I want to make games that do so. In fact, I have an internal Riot design talk on this once. I gave it okay. If a game isn't challenging and frustrating, I'm not interested in playing it, nor am I interested in making it. And if given the choice between shipping something boring or not getting greenlit to ship it at all, I'll take the latter every time. See, but that's like the thing, right? You're not supposed to make games just for you. You want to make a game that the mass audience is gonna like. Yes, you definitely want it to be a game you will enjoy playing, but you need to take into consideration, like, how the general audience is gonna feel. Like, if I make a food item that I like and I want to sell it, but nobody else likes it, does it really matter? No, because only I'm gonna enjoy it, and then at that point, it's basically worthless. And that's kind of like the same philosophy here. Like, if you make a game that only you care about and you don't care what anyone else thinks, then you're not really making a game. You're just making a side project for you. And that That's just horrible. Uh, yeah. I don't want to make things that waste people's time because there are plenty of other things out there to satisfy that need just fine. This is not everyone's decision, of course, which is why I made it my job to figure out how to make the cracked fighting game and not my job on how to get it to pay for itself. Yeah, again, he's just doubling down on he cared about making the game saucy. He didn't care about making the game fun for as many people as possible. You don't want me making product decisions because I have no personal or professional motivation to make profit for a corporation. I take it as a point of pride that almost everything I've worked on in both games and journalism has been freely accessible without an upfront cost because I grew up without a lot of money to access the hobbies I cared about dearly. Okay, I mean, yeah, that's understandable, I guess. But like at the same time, you know, this mindset is entirely wrong. Like more and more, he's just doubling down on this point, and I respect him for at least sticking to his guns, but he's just wrong entirely. When you make something, you need to make it as appealing as possible to the audience. That's probably like one of the reasons like why my channel and my stream don't grow as quickly as I'd like them to. I mean, there are other reasons like I'm not very consistent with my stuff, and I'm a pretty boring dude and pretty I keep to myself a lot. I don't really talk as much as I should, but I also don't do things that appeal to like the masses. Like I don't go around playing Mecha Chameleon or popular games like Marvel Rivals, League of Legends, stuff like that. Those are games that I'm not that interested in. But I understand that not playing those things can also hinder my growth, and I accept that. And I mean, I guess he accepts that, but at the same time, he's working for a company. This is not just him, so he has to take that kind of mindset and put it aside because it's other people's livelihoods on the line, not just his. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To me, the decisions that made Tokyo as cracked as it is in terms of sheer power and creativity that players can inflict upon each other in game was an expression of hope, a belief in parts of the fighting game experience that I think are what make the genre worth continuing forever. What I love about most fighting games is the way they can push people to exceed their perceived limitations solely because they want to press buttons or they want to press buttons good. And the profound impact that these games can have on people's lives is why I've been here for decades and have no intention of leaving. Personally, I love seeing the players continue to rise to challenges they presented for each other. It's what gives the genre meaning to me. The fact that we managed to ship a game that I felt was worth the fighting community's time, as someone who notably has not had a high opinion of almost every fighting game in the last 10 years, is the most valuable professional accomplishment. I could have hoped to achieve on this game far more than anything to do with popularity, longevity, and financial success. He's just more doubling down on he doesn't care about whether it's successful. He just wanted to make a cool game. So if you want to know why 2XKO ended up the way it did as a fighting game, the honest answer, from my perspective, is that we were given the time and space to figure out how to make a really cool fighting game we wanted to make, and the really cool fighting game we wanted to make as a team fighting game, as a team of fighting game veterans with an appetite shaped by decades of fighting game play, was going to be a lot more opinionated in its direction and vision than a game built in order to return value to corporate owners. Challenging games can be popular. League of Legends, Valorant, Marvel vs. Capcom. So let's figure out how to make a challenging game with some hooks. I like duos and free to play that might be able to break through and offer something new to the people. Okay, so we have two big games and then one of the biggest fighting games, but again, very small in comparison to the other two games. These two games are huge because the genres are popular. Fighting games are not popular. So, like, you can't really put these in the same thing as MVC. MVC is a popular fighting game, sure, but like compared to these two, it's minuscule. So, yeah, making a challenging fighting game might not necessarily have been it, honestly. Um let's see. Um, and well, if we're going to have reasonable shot breaking into the market dominated by the veterans who invented the genre, we're going to need something to try different anyway. I don't think playing it safe would have yielded a game that would hit the numbers needed to justify the investment anyway. Certainly not when going up against the dev teams who made games that got us hooked into the genre back then, or way back when. If you find yourself asking, why didn't they just do X? The answer is probably because we didn't think X would make the fighting game better, nor would we do X better than everyone else does X. If someone was just another Strive, Tekken, Grand Blue, or Street Fighter with League of Legends characters, we would not really contributing anything new or worthwhile to the genre, nor would we be building anything that had a reasonable shot at hitting the top spot. The team was never there to aim for second place, and the creative latitude and appetite for the risk of the game with those lofty goals made the job worthwhile. Okay, so they're talking about like their decisions were with the mindset of the game hitting the top spot as like the number one game, right? I saw a video by Lotus Asakura where he talked about like, tag games can be successful, and he's not wrong, they can. But like one of the things he cited was like, or the examples he cited were 2X or were Dragon Ball Fighters and Marvel Tokon and Marvel vs. Capcom, right? So those games were incredibly successful because of their IP and marketing. Now, League of Legends is a very big IP, but Lotus Asakura, by his own admission, never knows best. Doesn't understand that League of Legends, while the IP is huge, it pales in comparison to Dragon Ball and Marvel. Those IPs are established over decades and have huge dedicated fan bases, even more so than that of League of Legends. Dragon Ball on its own is one of the top 3 most popular IPs in Japan, and attracting the Japanese player base is a huge thing into making fighting games really strong. There are not that many like Japanese players playing 2XKO in comparison to like Dragon Ball or any other fighting game that they played. The IP of League of Legends is very popular, but it's just not at that level. So, to make a League of Legends fighting game a tag fighter with the aim of it being at the top, I don't think it's impossible, but it's a very difficult thing to ask because tag fighters are inherently much less popular to play than 1v1 fighters. Think Street Fighter, Tekken, Guilty Gear, Grand Blue. Okay, maybe not Grand Blue, but the Avatar. They're all very popular in 1v1 fighting games, especially Street Fighter, Tekken, even Mortal Kombat. Like Tekken, Street Fighter, and Mortal Kombat were like the big 3 for a long time, and they're all 1v1s. Like tag fighters didn't really break into like the top of the fighting games until Dragon Ball Fighters, and then after Dragon Ball Fighters, they really didn't get back up there again. Marvel vs. Capcom was close. It was very close, but it didn't break the top. Like the single player fighting games were definitely the ones, or like not single, but like the 1v1 fighting games were definitely the ones that are up there. So yes, Lotus tag fighters can be successful and work, but they're never gonna be at like the numbers of a 1v1 fighter. And the League of Legends IP is not nearly as big as the IPs of the tag fighters that did make it big, like Dragon Ball and Marvel. Those IPs are huge. League of Legends is like your channel, whereas Marvel and Dragon Ball are like PewDiePie's channel, as far as like how big they are, right? So there's that. All right. Okay, I was primarily there to learn that how to make a crack fighting game part, and treated my 10 years there as the equivalent of a PhD program in fighting game development, where the game itself was less important to me than the knowledge I unlocked from the work. So he really didn't care about the game. He just wanted to make a cracked fighting game, and he used this as a stepping stool, like a stepping stool. He basically he took the job and scammed Riot out of a 10-year salary for something he didn't care about. Is what I'm getting, right? Because he's by his own admission, he didn't care if the game succeeded. He just wanted to make a fun game, and he wasn't there for the game. He was there to learn. So yeah, he's. I'm sorry, Pat. You're not looking good in this at all. Yeah. Most dissertations take years of effort to live to only live in a library. At least this one, really playable. Working on 2X for me was the most unheard of chance to work on a genre I love with a team I cared about, with supportive publisher and IP to squander an IP. Squander that chance on something boring and safe, and instead of swinging for the fences, would have been the biggest waste I could imagine. Despite the fact that I ended up working on it for 10 years, about twice as long as I had planned, it was never my intention to stay on it forever. There are too many other things I want to do, and most of them don't involve working for someone else. I'm not a very good corporate drone. I'm not a very good corporate drone. Thanks to 2HKO, I got to learn far more than I ever imagined, and I would than I would have about fighting games work and what makes them tick. I'm extremely thankful for the opportunity. I sincerely hope that anyone else in the position to take creative risk on the corporate dime does so. The more irresponsible, the better, because we have enough boring successes out there already. But they're successful because the formula is proven to work, right? If by chance you get to take the shot like this, take the fucking shot. Tell me about it later. If it works out, buy me a beer. If it doesn't, I'll get the first round. Especially in the contemporary game development industry where successful devs are getting laid off anyway. You might as well just go for it. And with a sufficiently large game, it's basically impossible to predict which combinations of decisions will lead to the game's success or failure anyway. So you might as well do whatever you can to make the game one you personally believe in and let it rock. When the best possible reward for making a successful game is just that you get to keep on having a job, you might as well take the risk with someone else's money. A boring job in games is still a boring job, and this medium is not going anywhere without creative teams willing to take risks that seem ridiculous at the time. If a risk pays off, it'll only seem ridiculous in retrospect. I am, of course, sad for the team and sad for the players. The team has done their damnedest to usher the game into a dignified resting point. I've only played a couple of sets since the layoff. After playing the game for work for 10 years, playing the game as a player just feels like I'm giving Riot a freebie. But from what I've seen, the game has continued to improve, and I have the utmost confidence in the team to leave the game in a strong state in the community to play perpetually. Okay, so he worked on the game and then he didn't even play the game after the layoffs, right? Like I can understand where he's coming from a little bit, where like, if you're in the kitchen cooking all day, suddenly you don't really want to eat, you feel full, like that kind of mindset. But at the same time, like how can you claim you made a game you're proud of if you don't pick up the game and play it after some point? Like I can understand initially with the layoffs, you're bitter and all of that, and then of course you're working on it for so long, you're kind of tired of seeing it for a while. But if you don't pick it up and play it at some point, are you really proud of your product, or are you just spewing bullshit? Because now like I can't even believe what he's saying in that regard. Like, oh, he just wanted to make a cool fighting game and one that he's proud of. Okay, you wanted to make a cool fighting game, but are you really proud of it? Like, for real? But whatever. As much as getting laid off sucked, I am relieved that I only got to see the team at its best. I imagine working on the team after the layoffs must have felt like working on a ghost ship, and working on the game now after its final update has been announced must be even worse. As a fighting game player, though I am pleasantly surprised that 2xQ will be indefinitely playable via offline client and that its servers will remain open for the foreseeable future, the conversation around 2xQ has always been steeped in the miasma of live service game discourse. Is this game successful? Will it make a lot of money? Will you make money playing it? That had a real nasty stink to it, even though the core game itself is fun. Yeah, the game is fun. Ironically, as someone who only plays dead games, I'm far more interested in picking the game back up once the last patch drops, because anyone's still around, then clearly they're for the love of the game and not because they think it'll lead to some future clout reward or something. For whatever reason, the shadow of Riot's involvement brought out the absolute worst in the internet, and once it is gone, I think we'll have a great game that we can play freely for as long as we want. That is the part of the fighting game experience that I love the most, and while I had hoped 2xQ's run would go a bit longer before joining us in the fighting game graveyard, I am happy it made it to us nevertheless. Okay, so this is more like subconsciously admitting that he really didn't care if the game succeeded or not. Like, he only plays games that are quote unquote dead, and a game that he's supposedly proud of that he refused to play, he's playing it now that it's dead. Supposedly, we'll see if he actually does. But like, that's more kind of like pointing to he is kind of hoping for the game's failure, and now that it has failed, he's gonna play it. But whatever. To the 2xQ team, both current and former, thank you for your hard work. All of you know how much this game has meant to me, and I know it's meant a lot to all of you too. I hope that once this is all over and you're able to find closure and keep moving, that you remember the experience of making this game, the higher points, all the moonshots we took in service of doing something truly interesting and innovative in a genre older than most of our players, and plenty of team members. The reason I have not looked for any other job in games since is simply because I don't think I'll be able to find a chance to work on a team as creative, enthusiastic, or ambitious in fighting games without building it myself. All of you are part of something special, something I wouldn't expect to see ever again, and none of it would have happened without you. I made it my job to make sure to spread love of fighting games to everyone I could on the team, and I hope you take that love and nurture it for fighting game, then for something that makes you feel the way about fighting game makes me feel. 2xQ's run as a profit-generating machine may be over, but I believe its legacy will live on, and the hundreds of developers will all learn the craft of making fighting games together. I hope to make fighting games with you again, and I hope to play the fighting games you make on your own. It's a lot more fun when you're doing it for yourself, and with a lot less pressure for all the years, or a lot less pressure. For all my years working on the game, when it came down to it, I always felt that my biggest impact wasn't on the game, but on the team that made it. And I'm continuing to root for you all. If you came to us new to fighting games, I hope you were able to see what we love so much about them. And if you came to us as a veteran, I hope you were able to look at what we built with pride, a unique combination of history of fighting games, and couldn't have happened without your effort and expertise. To 2xQ players, thank you for playing the hell out of this game that I spent my 30s on, and it's been a hell of a journey. And while I'm sure this particular stop must be disappointing, it doesn't have to be the end of the line. Truthfully, it'll be sad to see players leave for other games and to no longer have new characters and balance patches to be excited for or dread. You'll have to ask yourself if you still want to play the game when it's no longer a contender for the big shiny new fighting game. And that means asking yourself why you play fighting games at all, and what kind of experience you'd like to have playing them. But what you're going through is what every fighting game player does or goes through the moment the game hits the point of its life cycle. Gone is the ambiguous potential of what the game could be, and all that remains is the game sits in front of you. The game's still here. It'll still be here whenever you want to come back to it, and every time you do, you'll enjoy it for free. You'll enjoy it free of any endless internet bullshit that has surrounded the game since day one. The haters will move on, the grifters will chase the bag elsewhere, and the only people left to be the people who just want to play the game and have a good time. This is what any fighting community should be, honestly, and I'm sorry that we couldn't give you that while we were actively supported. This is Maximilian Dude's mindset. Like, in Max's mind, the true FGC is the players who play the game after the game is done. And like, I mean, yeah, I guess. That's what any fighting game should be. And I'm sorry we can give you the game that we actively supported. But as someone who has made tending to dead games his vocation, all I can say is that for those who choose to keep playing, your best sets have yet to come. If anything, or if nothing else, I'll always have a setup at the clubhouse for any to execute a player who wants to mash. Let's go. Okay, so that's the end of it. PM, Patrick Miller, yeah. Alright, so my takeaway from this, right? He worked on the project for a long time. He's still bitter about the layoffs. So that happened quite a while ago. I don't know, get over it, I guess. Layoffs happen. It sucks that it happened, yes. But, get over it, move on. They decided to take a lot of risks, which is not always a bad thing, but in this case, it didn't work out. But my main takeaway from it is he just didn't really care about anything but what he wanted to do. He wanted to make a cool game, and he did. But he didn't care how it would affect other people's livelihoods, how it would affect the player base, how it would get new players into a fighting game. The easiest way to get new players into a fighting game is to show them new, cool, shiny things. Street Fighter 6 is not the best fighting game, but it did a very good job of like integrating newer players. The modern control scheme is very scrubby, 100%, but it was more like a stepping stone. So it allowed you to have that easy control scheme, but it also had a lot of limitations. This game, 2XKO, was designed with only the hardcore FGC in mind and didn't take into consideration the newer and more casual audience. Even if we're like not counting the money and profitability, this did nothing to grow the FGC with this type of mindset, because you only focused on the hardcore players. That's not how you get fighting games to grow. You need to have a balance of both. And I know it's really hard to do that, but it's important that you have this. You have to have, obviously, you want to cater to the veterans who've supported the game and kept, the genre alive. But at the same time, in order for things to grow and to stay alive, you need to get new players. If you make a game hard, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you make a game hard, then when the good player, who's very good, stomps the new player who's still learning, and the new player can't even do what they want because it's too difficult, the new player's just gonna leave. It's not worth their time. Like, it just is what it is. His entire mindset working on this project was just wrong. It was just messed up and wrong. And I personally think, like, the only people who should have been punished for this failure of the game are Pat and the people who think like Pat. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not objecting to making a game you're proud of. You should always be proud of the work you do and the products that you put out there, because if you're not, why even work on them in the first place? But at the same time, like, you still have to give a little. You can't have everything the way you want it to. So this, I don't know. I feel like we can add his mindset on the game as like another big contributing factor to why this game failed. But that's just how I feel about it. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel about it. Do you guys agree with him? Do you disagree? Do you agree with, like, when I talked about the other content creators like Lotus and Max and all that? But I know that those were brief parts, but still. Anyways, yeah. Leave a like, leave a comment. I'll catch you guys on the next video. I'm actually going on vacation over the next week, so I won't be home to do anything. So I have a couple videos I'm still working on, but They're gonna be out a little bit later because of the vacation and stuff. But yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Have a good one. See you soon.